Konnichiwa. To Nanako and Kaiko, thank you so much for being in touch with me, and to all the youth venturers in Japan, it's a pleasure to meet you for the first time. My name is Konstantin Buehler, and I look forward to talking to you this afternoon. I currently am a sophomore at Stanford University in Stanford, California, and I'm pursuing a major in management science engineering. I'm also the founder of Always Ready Kids. Always Ready Kids is the world's premier youth-run disaster preparedness organization. In the past 7 years since I founded Always Ready Kids, we have worked with over 15,000 individuals directly in over 4 continents. Always Ready Kids has been a nationwide leader in the United States in terms of changing policy and infecting the way that the United States treats youth disaster preparedness. As a change maker, I'm proud to say that Always Ready Kids has made significant change in the United States and abroad. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about how I came about with the idea of Always Ready Kids. See, the inspiration for Always Ready Kids was my Aunt Betsy. Aunt Betsy is a New Yorker. I'm a Chicagoan. Aunt Betsy was in New York on the day of 9/11/2001. Many of you remember that as the day of the World Trade Center bombings. So on 9/11/2001, Aunt Betsy was pushing the door on the building right across the street of the World Trade Center. All of a sudden, she heard a loud boom. So imagine you're pushing the door on a building across from another skyscraper in Tokyo, and all of a sudden you hear an explosive sound. Well, it's quite alarming, right? Well, to my Aunt Betsy, she thought that it was just the jets, because sometimes they have military jets going over and they create a sonic boom. So she wasn't that panicked. Another boom came a couple minutes later, and at that point someone threw her out of the door and started running. She looked up, she saw the World Trade Center was on fire, and she just began to run. So Aunt Betsy was on the run for 48 hours straight. And she finally survived after getting onto a military barge and crossing the river and living in a refugee camp for the next 2 days. When she came back to her home, it was completely destroyed in New York, so she had to come and live with our family for a while in Chicago. One night, Aunt Betsy and I were sitting by the fireplace right here in our home, and a silence came on the conversation. I asked her, I said, "Aunt Betsy, how did you survive when so many others died?" Well, she looked back at me and she said 3 words. The words were, "I was prepared." And that's all she gave me initially. So I said, "What do you mean, Aunt Betsy?" She said, "That day, I was ready for anything that would happen, mentally and physically." She said, "Not only was I prepared physically, I had a flashlight in my bag, I had a cell phone charger, I had Band-Aids, antiseptic wipes, I had a handkerchief which I covered my mouth to prevent asphyxia, to prevent myself from choking from all the smoke." She said, "Without that, I likely would have died. But most importantly," she said, "I was prepared mentally. I stayed calm and I knew what to do." And she said, "Without that, I don't know if I would have been here today." At the time, I was 9 years old, and listening to all this was kind of a shock. So the first thing I did was go to the internet and start to research disaster preparedness. Over the next year and a half, I came up with a formula, I came up with a plan on how I could make a significant difference in the United States to create a culture of preparing for disasters. When I was 11 years old, I applied for a youth venture grant of $821.26. I went through the interview process, I wrote the applications, I went and I did all the things I had to do, and at the end of it, I got the grant. Me and my friends had our first ever project where we had a packet that had basic preparedness items, and we gave it out to youth of lower income so that they could prepare for disasters, have a basic kit. But Always Ready Kids didn't stop there, not at the first project. Instead, we evolved. And here's how we evolved. Always Ready Kids didn't say, we have one model, and that model is king, and we will stick to that model. Instead, Always Ready Kids listened to what was around them. Myself and my friends who were members took in the advice of the people that we trusted and respected. Rather than saying what has happened before has already worked for us, we said what happened has worked for us in this project and we want to get better. So we want to have the information and the input of other people. That's when we found information from my family. My family gave me a lot of input, my parents, as well as my teachers, my instructors at school, as well as it progressed, a lot of other people. So our projects began to evolve. We changed from kits, we changed to more basic kits so that we could get to more people. Then we did presentations in schools. And then eventually we created something called the Preparedness Promise. The Preparedness Promise is a way of getting young people to prepare themselves and their families, becoming the leaders in their families of preparedness. So, as this progressed, Always Ready Kids got a lot of attention. First in local media, then in regional media, and in national media. And part of the attention we got is we began to partner with major government agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security, as well as FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. As time progressed, Always Ready Kids was ready to evolve. We were ready to change. We were ready to adapt and be flexible. So instead of sticking with the same model, we kept on moving forward to help the most people prepare for disasters. How did we do this? We decided that the way to do this was to affect policy. As a bunch of volunteers, we could only affect a certain amount of people. Thousands, yes, but not millions, not the amount that we wanted to affect. So we began to work on creating a way that we could affect policy. All of a sudden, people started contacting us. I was selected to be the national youth voice for a commission for President Obama and the Congress on youth disaster preparedness. And in actions, in affecting the policy of President Obama on youth preparedness, the Congress on youth preparedness, in going to Department of Homeland Security conferences and workshops, Always Ready Kids made a difference in the way that the United States sees youth disaster preparedness. So by being a change maker at the age of 11, I started by changing the people around me, changing my community, and eventually the change that Always Ready Kids generated changed our nation. I feel that I was very lucky to be part of a culture that embraced change. Both my father is an entrepreneur. Both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. My mother, highly educated and entrepreneurial, as were my grandmothers. So I grew up in a community that was very much believing in entrepreneurship and change and social change. I currently go to a university in California which is all about entrepreneurship and change. Stanford really embraces this concept where you got to go and try something, and if you fail, well, it's not a failure, it's actually just more experience. And I believe that that has made all the difference. By understanding that not succeeding is not a failure, it's odd to say, but not succeeding does not mean you failed. It means that you tried something different, and, well, you might not have achieved that, but you certainly achieved something experience-wise on the way, getting towards that. By understanding that, I was able to achieve. And in the short run, Always Ready Kids achieved. And then, instead of sticking with the same model, instead of saying we've achieved now, I adapted, and Always Ready Kids, we as a group adapted, and we went to the next model. And we kept on achieving to this degree that we are affecting policy and become a premier organization. To all the change makers in Japan, I understand the Japanese culture may not be as receptive towards change, especially towards youth change. To that, I plea for you to be strong and brave and make change. I'm sure you have understood in my conversations with Nanako, she understands that change is what makes things better. That making entrepreneurial difference makes a difference for everyone. If people wouldn't change, if people didn't try things new, we'd probably be back in the Stone Age. So my plea to you is to be change makers. is to be entrepreneurs, is to know that your actions, your creativity, will make a difference in the world. And to always be willing to change your change. Never stop with what you're doing currently. I love working for Always Ready Kids, and I'm prepared to keep working with Always Ready Kids and making change in youth disaster preparedness. I'm currently working on another project. I've worked on several entrepreneurial projects, many which have failed, some which have succeeded tremendously, as ARC, Always Ready Kids. The current one I'm working on is a project that will work with major financial houses to make entrepreneurship on university campuses easier. The project is still under wraps and it is still confidential, and my co-founder and I, we are not to talk about it. However, by the beginning of next year, we should be launching this project, and I would love to be able to reconnect and talk to you about how we are trying our best to make entrepreneurship and change even easier on the United States campuses, and hopefully in the future, easier in campuses around the world. So again, please, be the change you wish to see in the world. I ask you to be entrepreneurial and to know that the changes you make will change everything. Under the great leadership that I've seen in Youth Venture in Japan, such as Nanako, I am sure that you will be successful. And if you aren't successful, at least you will be experienced. Thank you. I look forward to being in touch again. Arigato.